going over for notes I took away from the Zoom on navigating services run by OCD Action, which I attended on Thursday evening. Navigating services, navigating NHS services. Okay, so in England, and I think, well, I'm just going to limit it to England because I can't quite remember. I think it's England and Wales that have to follow the NICE guidelines. In Scotland, it's a bit. I think Scotland does also have to follow the NICE guidelines. In Scotland they don't have to, but actually I'm going to leave Scotland out of this because I can't actually remember what they said in Scotland. Let's just stick to England anyway, that's where I live, England, so let's just stick to England. So, navigating services, NHS in England. Okay, so they have to follow the NICE guidance, okay? Now NICE stands for National Institute of Care and Excellence, I think that's right. And this is advice, government advice, government health advice, which the NHS which the NHS is highly encouraged to follow. It's not legally binding, but they are supposed to follow it. It's good practice, basically. And NICE is informed by evidence. It's informed by empirical evidence, so it's scientifically based, evidence-based approaches. Now, for OCD, there is something called the stepped care model. This is a stepped care model, which means that the person with a diagnosis of OCD has to be placed, when they go for NHS treatment, they have to be placed at a relevant level for them, where they're at, how severe is their OCD. If their OCD is pretty mild to moderate, uncomplicated, and is likely to respond to a short course of non-intensive CBT plus ERP, they'll be placed in they'll be slotted in at around step 1, step 2, which is the local level, which is primary care. So the GP might prescribe the medication. They might that's the lowest rung, by the way, primary care. GP is part of primary care. They might be referred to something called IAPT, which is improving access to psychological therapy. Time to Talk, I think it's also called. You can self-refer yourself to IAPT, by the way. You don't have to go through your GP. That's the lowest level, and you then get a short course of CBT with ERP. But as I said, that's for people with mild to moderate OCD who are not complicated by other conditions usually, and can respond. Although I think they're not supposed to turn people with autism away though. So just because someone's got diagnosis of autism doesn't mean that they are sent away from IAPT. That's made very clear, by the way. I know that people have been turned away from IAPT because they have autism, and that is not okay. They're not supposed to do that. That's discrimination. By uncomplicated, it's more that the conditions like they might have like autism, etc. on basically their OCD is not too severe. It's it can be managed at that level. So when you go for help with OCD, you should only ever be slotted in at the appropriate level, but you should never be stepped down a rung. You're not supposed to be stepped down. Okay, you're supposed to be stepped up. Okay, what that means is that if, say, for the sake of argument, someone goes for IAPT and it's not helping them, and they clearly need more intensive treatment, they're not supposed to be discharged. They're supposed to be stepped up to the next level, not stepped down. And likewise, IAPT isn't suitable for everyone as the first level either. Some people go to their GP or whatever, and say they might already be too severe for IAPT. It's not the case that they have to go to IAPT first. If they're too severe for IAPT, the GP would then refer to the next level, which is a community mental health team, which is higher than IAPT. And someone might experience IAPT therapy. It's not enough for them, they need more, then they can be stepped up as well. So it's not the case that you have to start at the lowest level and move up. You can be slotted in anywhere, at any level, basically. So that's the local level. So GP, primary care team, lowest rung. The secondary care is the Community Mental Health Team, CMHT. That's where I was referred to, and this is where they were not following the NICE guidelines and discharged me, which was completely and utterly against the rules. As you know, I'm in an ongoing complaint. So CMHT, that's where I was referred by the GP anyway. So if treatment in primary care has been unsuccessful, as I mentioned, also if more than one diagnosis, if more severe, second rung. Okay, but you can be referred straight to the CMHT if more severe or multiple diagnoses. Now, there are two options. Yeah, two options, as I just said. Now, another critical thing is that GPs can't diagnose OCD, they have to refer according to NICE. GPs are not allowed to diagnose OCD. That is not in their remit, contrary to what some people have said, like some idiots in the Reform Party and other people don't know what they're talking about. GPs cannot diagnose, they can't diagnose autism or ADHD either, by the way. They can't diagnose OCD, that is not their remit, they have to refer. Okay. So when you get to the CMHT, first of all, they tend to do an assessment. That's like a community mental health team, which is secondary care. They have to find out the purpose of treatment and the purpose of getting a diagnosis. A diagnosis of OCD is never needed to access treatment for OCD, and lots of people don't have a diagnosis just as great things. So I do have a diagnosis that was given to me ages ago, back in 2007, but you don't, and that's by a psychologist, but you don't technically need a diagnosis of OCD to access the appropriate therapy, because not everyone can access OCD diagnosis for all sorts of reasons, and they can still be put on that pathway as well, without having a formal diagnosis, as it were. Now, step 5 to 6 is what's called specialist care, and this is an option when someone has tried enough local treatments to justify this, or if they've not found treatment at these levels helpful. And the CMHT has to make this referral. The GP can't refer to specialist services, they can only refer to secondary services. So it would have to be a psychiatrist at a CMHT who makes the referral to more specialist services. And for this pathway, you need to apply for funding. As this is the next step up in the NHS stepped care system after secondary care, and you need to apply for funding to be seen at the specialist level. And there are various funding pathways. There's the Local Integrated Care Board, and this type of referral does not have any set criteria that you have to meet in terms of the number of rounds of CBT and ERP or the number of medications someone has to complete. So it's quite flexible. What matters is poor response to any previous treatment. If the local area is not an expert enough to offer what you need, they can still refer. So they should bloody well be referring me. That's part of my complaint, by the way. They're not following the bloody pathway at all, are they? If you're unable to take medication because of your condition, the medication requirement can be dropped on a case-by-case basis. So why aren't they dropping it for me? That's why I'm going to complain. Yes. God, it makes me angry. Anyway. Another thing that can happen, by the way, is something called patient choice. This is the legal right to choose under NHS England Constitution, and this is done by the GP rather than a community mental health team. You can ask your GP to refer you to another local area if secondary care is not treating locally. For example, there's something called CADAT at the Maudsley, and you can be referred to CADAT by the GP. This is sort of a loophole because CADAT is highly specialist in OCD, but it does also have a primary care team in it. So you can ask for the GP to refer you to their primary or secondary service. They can't refer to the specialist service, only to the primary or secondary service. However, they do have a specialist service too, so you could potentially be stepped up within that pathway. So that's kind of a loophole. So that could be a way to get around things, but there are certain referral criteria for CADAT. They can't take someone who needs more consistent care at the local level, so I'm not sure they'd take me because I do need quite consistent care, but there may well be other options, so that's something to look into. And as I said, people can refuse treatment that they're offered, including medication. That's been very clear. So I talked about the stepped care model. So it's in tiers: step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, which is secondary care, OCD with comorbidity. Poor response to initial treatment or where it's more severe. And you've got step 5, which is specialist outpatient. expertise in OCD, tier 3 and 4, OCD with significant comorbidity, more severely impaired functioning, and then finally you've got step 6, which is inpatient. Obviously that's not appropriate to me anyway, but that would be if, say, if someone's got risk to life or severe disability, they might be doing an inpatient. So you should be stepped up after unsuccessful treatment for more intensive specialised care, and someone can also be slotted in at a white level, wherever they are. So, as I say, there are various national OCD clinics you could ask a GP to refer you to out of area, and I'm going to be looking into that as why to choose. And funding for more specialised care is through the Integrated Care Board. That type of referral, or it can be via the Integrated Care Board, there's actually two approaches, but that type of referral does not have any set criteria you have to meet in terms of the number of rounds of CBT, ERP, or number of courses of medication a patient has had to complete. What matters is a poor response to any previous treatment and current impact on functioning. So that would be the pathway that I'd want to look into, really, because they're quite flexible. There's also the highly specialised services route, which is a little bit different. This has much stricter requirements, and that's NHS England funding. You need to have a high score on an OCD scale. I mean, I'd get that anyway because mine's pretty severe, 30 or above. Or a consultant can also provide a statement about how severe the symptoms are instead of a score. Unsuccessful treatment through therapy or 2 rounds of adequate CBT with ERP, medication. But if you are unable to take medication because of your condition, the medication requirement can be dropped on a case-by-case basis. So go figure, psychiatrist. Yes. So I'm going to stop now because I hope that's just shown you how my team have not been following the NICE guidelines at all and how angry I am. But I found that very, very useful, and go me, because I'm going to be complaining big time. So thank you for watching.